Yo everyone, we're going to be covering the full UFC Macau card, Yan vs Figueiredo. We have been doing extremely well on main event picks and our full card prediction picks as of late. So let's keep the train steamrolling ahead. I will be starting with the first fight of the card and working my way through it all the way to the main event. Timestamps will be in the description and the comments below. If you like the video, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to support the channel as well. It means a lot to me as a smaller channel. Anyways, to start, the first fight of the card is Maheshate Hayisaer versus Nikolas Motta. These names are going to be hard to pronounce on this card, guys. Anyways, honestly, a pretty solid fight this one is, and a pretty close one to start off the card. I can see on Tapology that the odds have Maheshate as a moderate favorite in this one, and to be honest, I see this as great odds on picking Nikolas Motta if you're a betting man. I think this one is almost a coin flip though, but if I had to edge it to one fighter in particular, I think I'm going to go with Maheshate Hayisaer, and it's mostly because I believe both fighters are quite solid on the feet, with maybe a very slight edge towards Nikolas Motta, who stands and fights with a Muay Thai stance. But I think if anyone is willing to change where this fight takes place, it will be Maheshate when he closes the distance. There is a potential he will be able to secure some takedowns and work his grappling in this fight. Basically speaking, I think Maheshate has more weapons and more ways to do well in this fight than Nikolas Motta. I also think he's got the physical advantages in this fight, like his size and range. He's 6 foot tall, while Motta is 5'9", and I believe Maheshate has some great knees and some kicks when someone's trying to close the distance or just standing at range from him. Motta is quick and does have knockout power, and is decently technical on the feet as a Muay Thai practitioner, but he has been finished twice in his last 5 fights. Jim Miller knocked him out, and Manuel Torres finished him as well by brutal KO, so his defense is definitely lacking. Maheshate also gets hit a lot, so it could make for an exciting fight that could go either way. Maheshate is the pick, slightly though. Long Xiao versus Quang. Now the odds for this fight have it as a dead even 50-50 at the time of this video, so you know these fellas are evenly matched. Quang is a decent power puncher that tends to try to close the distance and get the fight to the ground. He was on a decent win streak before losing a short notice fight, I believe versus Chris Gutierrez, which isn't the worst loss to have on your record at all, and Quang looked quite good in that fight and was able to control Chris a decent amount on the ground as well. Long Xiao, on the other hand, is a pretty well-rounded fighter that is definitely going to look to smother his opponents with his output and cage grappling. He's got quite a decent amount of power in his hands too, and had a razor-close fight with Road to UFC winner Chang Ho Lee, where he showed a lot of great heart in a fantastic fight, showed some great strikes in the clinch as well. He also showed a decent ability to stuff the takedowns, to scramble, to reverse position, and defensively grapple on the ground against Chang Ho Lee, who is a decent grappler. This is what has led me to ultimately pick Long Xiao to win this fight. I think he will be able to keep this fight standing and be able to put more output than Quang on the feet. Quang averages 1 strike per minute. He has an extremely low strikes per minute thrown stat, and that's the main reason I couldn't pick him to win this fight on the feet, even though I believe he's slightly more dangerous than Long Xiao. Long Xiao's the pick. Moving on to Kavanagh versus Jose Ochoa. Alrighty guys, to give you the background on this fight, Kavanagh is a moderate favorite going into this fight. He's got great kickboxing. He was a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu if I'm correct. The kid is young, 25 years old. He's very calm when he's striking in the octagon. He is super fast, maybe one of the fastest flyweights I've seen to date, and he has crazy power to have so many KOs in his career. He mixes in his kicks and punches very well. The only downside I see from him is that he does take quite a bit of damage and doesn't have the best defense, so there is always a chance he gets caught in this fight, especially when you're versing Jose Ochoa. Since Ochoa has bombs in his hands, he's decent on the feet. He is also a southpaw fighter who likes to throw his left hand. Once he enters the clinch range, expect him to spam some very damaging knees to the body and head if he clinches up. Ochoa is the bigger man at 5'7", with Lanier being 5'4", so there is a range and length advantage for Ochoa in this fight. But I will be going with Kavanagh in this one because I believe his opponents that he has beat and finished were considerably better than Ochoa's, and I find those wins to be more telling and more reliable as a way to predict this fight. I think Lanier will be the more technical fighter going into this bout, and I can't wait to see this fight because I think this one ends in a finish for sure. Lanier's the pick, and we are moving on to Carlos Hernandez versus Nyamjargal Tumendemberel. Now this one feels like an extremely hard one to pick, and it's because of a few factors. Nyamjargal is relatively unknown since we haven't seen him up against any decent level of competition in the flyweight division, so it's hard to see how he will battle against some adversity in this fight against that battle-tested Carlos Hernandez. Nyamjargal has finished a lot of fighters, but he's not the strongest or most technical grappler. He will keep fighting for the takedown though, with a high average takedown rate per fight. I think when it comes to keeping top position and keeping his hooks in when he's on someone's back, I think he's pretty weak there, and I think Carlos Hernandez players will be able to exploit this and have an easier time keeping it on the feet. I also think although he lost to Rei Saruya and Tatsuro Taira back-to-back, he displayed some great defensive grappling with a pretty solid ability to not only sprawl, but to recover and work his way up from being taken down as well. I can really see Nyamjargal getting frustrated not being able to hold down Carlos Hernandez in this fight. I don't think Nyamjargal is anywhere close to the same level of grappler as Rei Saruya or Tatsuro Taira, but that's the beauty of the sport because we get to find out this weekend. That's the pick. We move on to Xiaocan Feng versus Ming. Well, guys, I'm going to be going with Xiaocan Feng in this fight, and I'll be adding her to my confident picks list as well. She is just a fantastic prospect from China who's shown a great ability to throw punches and a great ability to avoid punches as well. I believe for every punch she takes, she lands 6 punches according to her stats, which is insane, by the way. She really is a talent on the feet. Tall, she's rangy, she has nice kicks, and a great overall stand-up game. She also has a great ability to get up and shows a lot of urgency if she is taken down, and which is great to see. For Ming, she is also well-rounded, but I just believe she isn't on the same level as Feng Xiaocan. Her stand-up is good, but she will be the shorter, less rangy fighter who is also a little bit less technical going into this one. And I also watched her last fight versus Zhang, which she won, but I honestly thought it was a pretty bad robbery since her opponent did fantastic at securing so many takedowns in this fight and was able to land so many counter shots as well, but I'll need to rewatch it. This fight will probably stay standing, and if it does, I can see Feng winning pretty easily. Feng Xiaocan is the pick. We move on to Kiru Sahota versus Donghoon Choi. This is a pretty close fight. Why can't these be easy to pick, guys? Donghoon Choi is a slight favorite going into this fight, but odds could very well be 50-50 in my opinion. Let me go through all the areas of the game to let you know who's better at what, shall we? In terms of the stand-up, Kiru Sahota will have the advantage just because he's so big and rangy. It's going to be hard to close the distance, and Donghoon Choi isn't the marauder type of fighter either. He's the type of fighter that likes to pick his shots from the outside, which may be quite tricky for him in this matchup. In terms of their grappling, Donghoon Choi has the clear advantage in this fight. He will definitely be looking to secure the takedowns in this fight in my opinion. Kiru Sahota does have decent takedown defense, but I do think that Donghoon Choi might be able to outmuscle him a little because of the difference in their physicality. Kiru Sahota does have decent submissions from the ground. You might never know what could happen, but I think Choi will be responsible enough to avoid them and will be most likely be looking for the submissions like anaconda chokes and dash chokes if it does get to the ground. 50-50 pretty much, guys. I'm leaning towards Choi mainly because of the grappling advantage, but something I don't like is that Choi shows a lot of physical damage when he gets hit. It doesn't affect how he fights in any way, but the judges will see visible damage on a fighter and it could potentially sway a lot of close decisions in his career. Anyways, guys, Choi is the pick. We move on. Su Young-yu versus Baergeng Genesuli. Man, they really know how to match up fighters on this card. This is another pick'em fight. Both fighters have very similar styles. What I mean by this is that both fighters are very decent on the feet, but will be looking to use their grappling to their advantage in this fight. It's anyone's guess who the stronger grappler will be in this fight. I think Genesuli is slightly more technical in the grappling, but it's pretty close. I also will be giving the power advantage to Su Young-yu in this fight, but I'd give the technical stand-up advantage to Genesuli by a slight margin. Not much to say on this, guys. It really is who you might favor more, and in this matchup, I favor Genesuli slightly more, just because I think overall he's slightly less sloppy than Young-yu when he's boxing with his opponents, which makes me lean towards him. So Baergeng Genesuli is my pick. We move on to the main card. Ozzy Diaz versus Mingyang Zhang. Man, I think this fight is going to be some fireworks because both of these guys hit pretty hard. I'd give the power advantage to Zhang, but they both have knockout power potential. Ozzy Diaz has had some sort of unfortunate run so far, was on a 5-fight win streak before getting a shot on Dana White's Contender Series, where he debuted against Joe Pyfer, which is insane. Pretty unlucky draw. He got finished in that fight, but he didn't look too terrible with his stand-up offense and defensive grappling. Since then, he has KO'd 2 opponents at LFA, and now is making his official UFC debut against Zhang Mingyang, which, I'll be honest guys, is another rough draw. Zhang is an absolute monster, and has been finishing his opponents left and right. The only gripe I have with him is that I believe someone will catch him one day if he keeps rushing in the way he does. His offense is great, but his defense is definitely lacking, and he does take damage in his fights. But I just don't think Ozzy Diaz will be the one to put him out. Ozzy gets hit way too much, especially by straight punches like jabs, straight right hands as well. He has the potential to stop Zhang, but I can see Zhang backing him up and unloading to do so much damage in this fight and getting an early stoppage. I don't think Zhang will respect his power. that could come back to bite him, but that is my pick. We move on to the next fight. Volkan Oezdemir versus Carlos Ulberg. I've been super keen to see another Carlos Ulberg performance because I've been pretty high and mighty on him as a prospect. I'm 100% picking Carlos Ulberg in this fight to win. He is a heavy favorite for a reason, and I think I know that reason. He's a fantastic kickboxer with big power, fights very light on his feet, and he has a huge left hook. His style reminds me a lot of Pereira, especially since, like I mentioned already, he has a killer shot that is the lean back check left hook. Ulberg likes to fight on the outside. He will mix in some leg kicks and body punches. He is not just a headhunter. Oezdemir is a forward pressure fighter, so he will be looking to close the distance to do his best work inside the pocket, and that's where I believe he will be the most dangerous in this fight. But the problem with that is, and that's a problem for Oezdemir as well, and is the main reason I'm picking Carlos Ulberg to win this fight and putting him on my confident picks list, is because Oezdemir doesn't have the greatest defense when closing the distance, and I believe someone like Carlos Ulberg will be able to punish that poor defense with his left hook specifically. I don't think the fight goes the distance. I can see Ulberg getting a KO within 2 rounds by left hook. I'm calling it now. That's my pick. We're moving on to Cong Wang versus Gabriella Fernandes. This might be one of the most exciting women's MMA fights as of recent. Great matchup, and expect a lot of action early from these girls, especially if Fernandes doesn't respect the power of Cong Wang and fights the way she fought Jieleyisi just recently. I will say one thing though, Cong Wang is super dangerous and is an amazing kickboxer. I personally think she's levels above a lot of girls in the division right now, and I definitely think she's better than Gabriella Fernandes on the feet. Fun fact as well for you, she actually beat Valentina Shevchenko in a kickboxing match around 8 to 9 years ago, so you know she's pretty solid. I do, however, think that Fernandes is the slightly more well-rounded fighter, and I could see her trying to work in some grappling in this fight for sure, but I will be honest, I'm going to go with Cong Wang just because of that stand-up advantage being so overwhelming, and I think she gets this one done. Moving on to Song Kenan versus Muslim Salikov. The thing is, guys, Song Kenan is actually super talented, and technically speaking, he might have the slight edge over Muslim Salikov, but he just seems to make so many mistakes in his fights. It's not even funny at this point. He's had fighters hurt, and he's just decided to not finish him off and lose fights sometimes. I also think Muslim Salikov will fight smart. He's pretty solid from range, especially with his kicks. He's deceptively quick for an older fighter, and he's just been more reliable in a fight than most fighters, including Song Kenan himself. Like I said, if Song Kenan wins, I wouldn't be super surprised, but he is a little unreliable as a pick, and I'd go with Muslim Salikov just because of that reliability. The only thing I worry about Muslim Salikov is when he starts to slow down in his fights, he's very susceptible to being finished, so you will need to watch careful if it makes it to the 3rd round. Muslim Salikov is the pick. Not super confident, but that's the pick. Moving on to the co-main event, Yan Xiaonan versus Tabitha Ricci. Now, initially, I was going to insta-pick Yan Xiaonan because I believe she's the stronger fighter. She's got great striking, she's powerful punches, and she usually does well against forward-pressing fighters like Tabitha Ricci, who can be quite lax on defense when closing the distance. But I will be going with another underdog pick and gonna go with Tabitha Ricci in this one. I think it's mostly just because I've been seeing a lot of people ragging on her a little too much, saying she doesn't have much going for her. Her fights are super close and she doesn't have the best grappling skills, but I think she's definitely being overlooked here, and that's why I'm picking her to get the upset. Yan Xiaonan has struggled in her career against wrestlers, absolutely obliterated by the likes of Carla Esparza and Zhang Weili, although these are former champions and the highest level grapplers in the world, so not that embarrassing. But she has shown to be able to get taken down fairly easily, especially when someone chain wrestles, which I believe Tabitha Ricci might be able to do, since she usually goes for a single leg into some sort of trip that tends to work in her fights. She also has a few throws from the clinch, which I like. I can see Tabitha Ricci winning this fight by decision with her grappling, staying on top position, and being able to skew her rounds. She is quite active and she does throw a lot of strikes, so it's going to be hard to beat her on output too if she mixes in the grappling. But guys, Yan could really just piece her up for 3 rounds. But, you know, where is the fun in picking the favorites all the time? We go Tabitha Ricci to get this one done. That's the pick. We move on to the main event, Petr Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo. And the votes are in, guys, and you guys picked for the subscriber pick of UFC Fight Night Yan versus Figueiredo. It ended up being both. It was an exact tie between Petr Yan and Deiveson Figueiredo. I couldn't believe it. It's a 50-50, especially when the odds are so far in favor of Petr Yan. So there is no real subscriber pick for you guys this card. Make sure for next week, please try to get these votes a little bit more lopsided, because it's been almost exactly even for a while now. Alright guys, Now, I've thought about this a lot, and I've already picked quite a few underdogs already on this card, and I told myself that's good enough already. But Deiveson Figueiredo is a pretty sizable underdog going into this fight, and I can understand why when he's versing someone like Petr Yan, who has a resume that he does in the bantamweight division, I can understand why Petr Yan is the favorite. But I've just got this feeling that Figgy gets this one done, either by finish or I could see him winning a decision, but it's definitely a lot closer than the odds suggest because of so many factors. Yan, although he's a fantastic striker and one of the best all-round strikers in the UFC, does get hit a lot more than people realize, and the man takes an insane amount of damage in his fights. He walks away from a lot of fights with big injuries and seems to always get injured in the middle of his fights too many times. Petr Yan will have the advantage on the feet from a technical standpoint in this fight, and he will also have the cardio advantage, I believe, if this fight ends up going into the later rounds, since he will be able to push the pace more with his stand-up. But Deiveson is amazing all around as well, and I don't think we will see too much grappling from Yan in this fight against Figgy. But we could see Figgy get Yan down this fight and hold him down on the ground to secure a round or two. Deiveson has brought the flyweight division grappling skill with him to the bantamweight division, and Petr Yan still has the same issues that he had in the second fight with Aljamain Sterling, which is that if he starts facing some adversity in the grappling, he gives up his back way too easily, and that's where I can see Figgy capitalizing and being able to get Yan's back, securing a round or two. I also think that if Deiveson hits Petr Yan the way Song Yadong did with some of his shots in this recent fight, I see him hurting Petr Yan bad in this fight and potentially putting him away. I think Deiveson might have the most powerful punches out of any fighter in the division. People forget that he was able to knock down Chito Vera with his right hand, and O'Malley couldn't do that with the biggest, nastiest knee I've ever seen land. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm still super nervous for Figgy in this fight. I can see why Yan is the favorite, but Deiveson Figueiredo is my pick, and I'm going to stick with it, guys. You would think I love picking underdogs, but it's just for this card. And that's it for my prediction video, guys. And I just want to say thanks for the recent love on my newest video. If you haven't seen it yet, please go check it out. I just spoke on how much I felt Stipe had been disrespected after UFC 309 just because he didn't get his retirement package. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.